I'm Tracy Osborne, and you're listening to the Daring Woman podcast. Imagine the story of a generation being altered by women who were empowered to live their truth and in turn can empower others to live theirs. It's time to rewrite the narrative. All right, well, if you've been following me for any amount of time, you probably know my story. You know that I was raped at 18. I was raped again at 19 and sexually assaulted at 23. Fortunately for me, I never got pregnant or anything from any of those rapes. And I can't imagine what I would do if I had. It's something that I've talked about with people before, especially when we bring up the abortion topic, which is, I know, a very hot topic, and we're not really going to discuss that today. But that is one of the circumstances that I personally feel it would be okay to get an abortion for if you got pregnant because of such a traumatic event. But my guest today, Lindsay Dam, found herself in exactly that situation, and she chose to keep the baby. And I know that she is absolutely loving motherhood. So Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on the show to share your story with us.
I am so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So take us back, feel free to divulge, whatever makes you feel comfortable about the actual event and everything. But, kind of take us back to what happened, and we're just going to kind of go from there and talk about where you are now.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. So the actual event itself, it's not one that I'll share it, and I'm very happy to do so, because one of the things that I think is so much more important is what I did with it.
Exactly.
And I really like to talk about that and put more energy into that with my story, because I think that's what really makes us who we are, is how we respond to things. But it was somebody that I had known for a few months, and I had made it very clear to him multiple times that I was not interested in him. And I used to go surfing quite a bit in my pre-motherhood days, and I had met him out there surfing, and we were camping at the beach, and he did the whole "I don't have a place to stay" thing, and so we had been out drinking with friends, and I said, fine, you can sleep in my tent, but nothing is going to happen. I'm not interested. And that had been the fourth time that I had told him, no, I'm not interested in you, and we're not going to do anything ever. And I had a bit too much to drink and put my head down on the pillow. And that's the last thing I remember. And I woke up the next morning, and it was very clear and obvious that something had happened. And I was really, really upset and, angry naturally. And, he was saying, oh, we made true love. And, it was just really yucky and toxic, and obviously not respectful of my boundaries or wishes or anything, as any event like that is. And I found out almost right away that I was pregnant, because I was supposed to start my cycle. And so it was 2 weeks later that I found out I was pregnant. And, at that time in my head, I was all in this, wild state in my mind, because I had no idea what I was going to do. And, oh my gosh, this is my life now. And I didn't even admit to myself, and I think a lot of women do this, I didn't even admit to myself for 4 months that I had been taken advantage of. And it was actually through the help of some friends, when I gave them the whole story in detail, they said, Lindsay, that sounds like you were raped. And I was actually at that time on a women's retreat, 4 months pregnant, and had been in such denial to myself, because I've always been self-sufficient. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been strong. And, I really didn't want to admit that this thing had happened to me. And so that's really about 4 months pregnant was when I really started being honest with myself and going in and doing some of the work and uncovering all the messiness that entails. But, there was a while there where, you're in a really kind of messed up mental state after something like that happens. And then you find out you're pregnant. And if anyone's ever been pregnant, your hormones are going crazy anyways.
Oh,
and you're
absolutely.
not sure what to think or feel or anything. And so it was quite an adventure, I will say. I will say that. And for about a month after I found out I was pregnant, I had thought, I need to feed into what society thinks is right. And I, at the time, was thinking that was right. And I needed to do, I'm doing the air quotes right now, even though you can't see me, the right thing, and tried to have a relationship with this guy. And that lasted about a month. And during that time, I woke up to him raping me at 4 a.m. almost every single night. And I was terrified to be in my house. I was terrified to be in my bed, in my own bed. And, I had just lost all of my self-power, all of my personal power. And he was showing up at my work unannounced and coming into my house when I wasn't there. And I finally was able to get rid of him. And at 4 months pregnant, I moved on a whim into another house so he couldn't find me. And I, all of a sudden was, realizing that I was dealing with, honestly, a sociopath and somebody who had some serious mental health issues, and didn't feel safe for the first time ever in my house. And so, that just, when you're pregnant too, that the last, when you're pregnant, you want to be able to nest and you get ready. And so it just stirred up so much stuff. And it really allowed me the opportunity to really say, no more, and go deep and really identify my values and do the healing work to rewrite and to rewrite my story and what I was attracting to my life, and really just fully take ownership and responsibility and transform my life. And it was an intense time, and it was one of the most empowering times of my life too, because it really allowed me to see how incredible and strong I am and what I can achieve and what I can overcome and what I can really do, and allowed me to I've been a healer professionally for almost 20 years, and it allowed me to take my work to exponential new heights. And now it allows me to empower other women and to help them overcome, traumas and obstacles and rewrite their stories for their future. Right. And so because of that, I am so incredibly grateful. And, I live an incredible life now, and it would not be if that had happened. And it wouldn't be if my son hadn't come into my life. I would probably still be doing the same job that I had lost passion for many years ago. So now that I'm well on the other side of it, I can really say with such heartfelt gratitude, and this is me personally, I would, everyone has their own path and their own journey, but for me personally, I am very, very grateful for the opportunity that it's provided. And I want to be very clear that I do not condone or justify rape or taking advantage of anyone ever, but that's what I've come to in my own heart.
You've found the silver lining in your trauma.
Exactly.
And have embraced that. And that's hard. It's very hard. I'm kind of the same way. I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
But I feel that for me in my past has happened because it needed to lead me to the point to where I could be doing what I'm doing today.
Yes.
Is, like you, helping women to overcome that trauma. And I couldn't, you can't understand the emotions and the feelings and the mindset and the guilt and the shame and the anger and all of that unless you've actually been there and experienced it. So in a way, I too am grateful for what has happened to me.
And it's what you chose to do with it afterwards.
Yeah.
And now, that's, I think, where we can really find the gratitude.
Absolutely. So, you kind of did the same thing I did, which is, you kind of blocked out the initial incident, and kind of made light of what it truly was for a few months. And I did the same thing with the two rapes for sure. The first one I was actually I was awake for. I was there for it. And it took me a while to really process what had happened. And it wasn't until I started writing and was writing an essay on it for college class, actually, that all the details truly came flooding back.
Yeah.
And I was able to start processing that. The second one, I was like you, I'd had too much to drink. I was over at an apartment with these two guys. We were, they were older than me, so they were supplying me with alcohol. And I woke up the next morning, and it was obvious that something had happened. And, to this day, I couldn't tell you who, what, when, where, why, how many. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so I just chose to forget it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so when you got to that point, 4 months in, where your friends are saying, hello, there's a name for this. This is called rape, and this is, what happened to you. What was that initial just holy shit moment for you?
It's odd to say this, and no one's ever asked me this question exactly like this, like in that moment. It's odd to say this because there are three women. We were on a women's retreat, and this group of women, I refer to them as my surrogate mothers. They're very close, but they're like the wise women in my life. And I individually with each one of them, because here I am, we've known each other for years, and here I am, I'm showing up pregnant, and just, they're grandmothers and surrogate mothers and grandmothers. One of them never had her own children, but she has many children. Sure. And I was having these deep conversations with them all individually, and they all individually said, Lindsay, that sounds like rape. And that's what this is. And it was odd because it was almost like a sense of relief, because I felt like I was going crazy in my head.
Sure.
And it was like there was a name for it. And it's almost like people, this has not been my experience, but it's almost like for people who are dealing with chronic illness, or they have these things that they don't have answers for, and then they get a diagnosis. It's almost like now I can create a plan moving forward, right? Now I can kind of make sense in my logical mind about what's happening. And now I can do some work and go forth from this. And it was an odd sense of relief in that. But at the same time, it was like, it really allowed me to play into that victim mindset and like, oh my gosh, this happened. And one of the first articles I wrote it was published on Medium about this scenario. The situation was why getting raped was one of the best things that happened to me. Mm-hmm. And, that's obviously a very triggering headline, but it really got attention. And that was the first time I really came out and was honest and open publicly about what had happened. And many people close to me, they were in denial for themselves and said, that didn't happen to you. That's not what you first said. So that actually isn't what happened to you. And there was a lot of backlash. And I see this particularly with, if you see big names in the news of people coming forward and they say, oh, she just wants attention. It was almost like that. And, this whole thing about, women, they just want attention. They just
sensationalizing it.
Yes. And it's like, this is a horrible thing that happens to people. Why would anybody want to glorify that? Right. And it's embarrassing. And there's so much shame that comes in the person who comes out and comes forward and says this. And so, it was a mix of relief, of permission to, now I know what I can do, or I can at least create a plan moving forward. And I had an amazing nurse midwife at the time who was so helpful to me, and they offered therapy where I was going, and I was seeing another therapist, but now it was like, now I can do something with this, right? Instead of what the heck is happening right with my life,
Sure.
And it's like, and it was so perfect because it happened on a women's retreat in Mexico. I was really disconnected. I had just moved into my place and was just kind of had been able to get him out of my space for the first time. And I had moved in, my apartment was filled with boxes, and I got on a plane and I went to this retreat. So I was 1,500 miles away from home, actually disconnected from the situation, and could see things more clearly. So, and again, I come back to saying this all the time. I'm so grateful for that, because it really, it paved the way, and it gave permission for me to really do the work I needed to do. And being a healer myself, I tend to take things to the next level, and that's just who I am. And I believe that that's a part of my path, so I can do the profound work that I do with my clients. But it also, I knew for me, I wanted to get so much beyond me before I brought this child into the world. And so, the healing, I continued for a year after he was born, but I know that I was able to move through so much while I was pregnant. And so I wasn't fully in this state when I brought him, when he came into the world. So I had about 5 months. And I cried every night in the bathtub reading Brene Brown and self-help books, and, but I was I was really committed to going deep and to moving beyond this, and to not having this be what identifies me.
So many women, well, I can't say so many women, but women in your situation, when they find themselves in this situation where they have been violated and now they're pregnant, you said that you've gotten him out of your life, but so many women are stuck with, well, my rapist is the father of my baby and now he wants rights. Yeah. Are you going through that at all?
No. And I am so thankful. I see so many, I could not imagine what it would be like to have to see him every day, or, regularly.
On a regular basis, yeah.
He did not. Now, where I am, I know it's different state by state. Where I am, I'm in Oregon now, and that's where my baby was born. And in Oregon, if I had gone to press charges, they can't really prove anything.
Right.
And so it's basically he said, she said, and I would have basically given him parental rights by doing something like that. So for me, I chose, and I'm a very strong-willed person, and the last thing I told him was, good luck having anything to do with this baby's life. And he, I yelled to him in a parking lot. He sped off in the car, and I never saw or heard from him again. And, I'm thankful that he never did. And I have been very public about what happened. And so, I don't know that, not everybody is. And so I've been very public, and I use my social media platforms. And we know mutual people. So I can't imagine anybody wanting to be like, yep, that's me. I did that. I raped her. Yeah. And, so, but who knows, some people are crazy. And so fortunately my son is 3.5 almost. I have not had to deal with that whatsoever. And I kept his name off of the birth certificate. So, if he ever does, I do know that he has to find me. Sure. And he would have to pay for all the, tests and all the legal fees and all that. So, I am just so thankful that he has never tried coming out. And I think if I had not been so vocal about what had happened, it might be a different story. But, I have no idea. So I haven't had to deal with that. I'm very thankful. I couldn't imagine what it would be like for someone to have to do that. And my heart goes out to anybody who's listening, if that is their situation, because that's just, triggering a wound over and over and over again.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and being open and sharing your story and your journey with us, and how you've been able to take a horrific event and turn it into something wonderful in your life. And have done the work to forgive yourself. I don't know if you've forgiven him. I will probably never forgive mine, but I have forgiven myself. And that's the important part. But I also know that you recently released a book with your story. So tell us about that. I want to make sure we talk about that.
I did. Thank you so much. It's called Naked, A Woman Reborn. It is a story of my transformation from getting pregnant from rape and really utilizing that as an opportunity to go deep and go to the childhood wounds. One of my earliest memories is being inappropriately touched from my pediatrician when I was 2 years old. So as an energy worker, as an energy healer, I can recognize and see that I had this active vibration in my energy field. And so it's really a lot of the work of going through all of that and healing from that. And my dad passed away, bless his soul, when I was pregnant, and I am one of the ones that found his body. So I am the person who found his body. So I had multiple traumas in a very short period of time. And it's really the story of going back to the beginning, going back to the root, healing from the inside out. And I guide the reader not only through my emotional journey, but through my healing journey. So I offer some really deep, profound healings that the reader can do for herself or himself. And, again, go back to those journeys and really, truly, I guide them through womb healing, which is our seat of emotions, and ancestral healings, generational healing, and forgiveness, and really finding true forgiveness. And that's something that you mentioned just before we started talking about this. And it's so important. I publicly forgive him in my book. And I have, and that's not an easy thing, and you can't expect anyone to do that. For me, it was a part of my journey. But the forgiveness for everybody to know is to set yourself free. It's not to justify or say it's okay that you did this. It's to stop giving your power to them and to the situation, and it really sets yourself free. So it's my book. I have been getting messages from all over the world about how it's impacted people and allowed them to heal themselves from several different traumas. And so it's been so just overwhelmingly positive. And, it was one of the scariest things I ever did was write this book. And it's had such an impact all over the world. It's in 6 countries already. So I'm so excited. Yes. Yeah. So it's called Naked, A Woman Reborn, and it is available on Amazon and Kindle. So.
Yep. If you're on the website, daringwomaninc.com/stories is the main podcast page. And then you find Lindsay's interview. It'll be on that page on the show notes. If you're listening to us on iTunes or iHeart or Google Play, an easy URL for you, it would be daringwomaninc.com/naked. daringwomaninc.com/naked. That'll take you straight over to the book so that you can purchase it. That is an affiliate link, so I may earn like 20 cents if you buy the book, but it just goes back to helping keep this website and keep the company rolling, so I can bring wonderful women like Lindsay to you to share their stories. So Lindsay, thank you again for coming on and sharing your story. I can't wait to read your book myself. I haven't had a chance to grab it yet, but I definitely will.
It's been so wonderful, and I'm so excited. I'd love to hear your thoughts and how it moved you. So Thank you so much for having me on here. It's been such a pleasure.
Absolutely. And ladies, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to take time for yourself. Self-care is so important. And I'm not just talking about bubble baths and manicures. I'm talking about all that deep work inside, setting your boundaries, saying no, working on the forgiveness. We need to do that with ourselves. And again, as always, if you are struggling, you are lonely, you are whatever, come share with us in our community over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/daring woman. It's a safe space. What happens in that group stays in that group, and we are all there to love, inspire, and support one another. So make sure you come join us. And until then, I will see you in the group, and we will talk to you next week.